All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we got some ACC team previews. We're diving into NC State here. If you are enjoying the content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support we've gotten so far. But we're going to start out with Marcus here, talk about the offensive strengths of the NC State Wolfpack into this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, I have on the surface, everyone kind of, I think, immediately jumps to love this team because it's Will Wade. I actually, like, my bold prediction. I'm just going to actually throw my bold.
Whoa, it's too early for this.
You're supposed to be talking about the strength.
No. I want to hear it. He's already there.
I'm just going to dive into the bold prediction, and then we're gonna come back. My bold prediction is like, this isn't really quantifiable, but they're going to fail to meet expectations by kind of a wide margin. I think everyone is coming into this season with like, oh, Will Wade's coming to NC State, and like they got some guys in the portal, but like overall, I know we didn't do transfer portal reviews for this team for anybody in the ACC, but like everyone knows, if they've listened to our podcast, how high I am on Darian Williams. I'm really high on him to kind of go into the strengths. Like, I'm high on him as a playmaker. 23.1% assist rate last year. But, the offense itself, like, I'm not going to get too much into the weaknesses, but I just have concerns with this team as a whole. I think there's like some unknowns. Like Holloman, I think, can be a decent playmaker. Like, he had almost a 30% assist rate last year. But like, one of my weaknesses I'll talk about in a second to kind of counter argue those assist rates. We'll talk about in a minute. But then like Arsenault's, the only other thing I guess is a strength is Arsenault's upside. I guess he's played at Houston. I know I kind of caught some heat last year in a Houston video because I was trashing him a little bit. But I think like he's played for a Houston team that like was really good, but he didn't have a ton of opportunities. So I think potentially there's some offensive upside there for Arsenault. It's just really hard to know because we haven't seen a ton of it because he just didn't have a big role and he was primarily coming off the bench. But yeah, I know that was a lot, but I'll kick it over to you, Cody.
I was gonna let you go right to the weaknesses. All right, Cody, let's hear some strengths.
I'm not sure if I should talk about strengths or weaknesses here.
Let's hand it off to you for both. Some strengths.
Should I just do both?
Yeah,
I think
some positives, then some.
There was a lot of weaknesses mentioned, and then there was a lot of backhanded compliments with the strengths. So I'm gonna
give them something good.
I'll start with the strengths. How about that?
Okay.
I think the guard and wing depth, I think, is a strength of this roster. I think there's a lot of different options across this roster. Like, there's proven high major talents in Holloman, Alan Breed when he was at Providence, Terrence Arsenault, Kadir Copeland was formerly at Syracuse before he went to McNeese. And then there's a couple sleepers on the bench who project to come off the bench at this point in time, and Paul McNeil and Matt Abel, who are like potential draft picks at this point in time. I think they're sitting on like the second round of draft boards right now. So I do think there's some upside with those guys, but I think it kind of remains to be seen what they can provide. Like, McNeil only played 9 minutes per game on an NC State team that really struggled and had their coach fired. So who knows like how much he's going to provide. And Abel's just coming in as a 4-star freshman here. But yeah, I think this is a team that's probably going to thrive in transition with the athletes they have in the backcourt. And then I think offensive rebounding is another strength of this roster, strictly because it's more of an emphasis of a Will Wade offense. They just love to crash the offensive glass. And Wade coach teams have finished inside the top 100 in offensive rebounding in 9 of his 11 seasons as a head coach, including each of the last 6 seasons. Some of that happened with McNeese in the Southland. I mean, they were just a superior athletic team. But I do think the emphasis in itself was going to make it a strength. And it's going to be led by Van Allen Lubin, who looks to be the biggest contributor in this area. He had an 11.4% offensive rebound rate last season. And then a guy like Scotty Abubi coming back or coming from Wyoming, he projects to be great on the offensive glass. He's probably going to receive the backup minutes, maybe get 10 to 12 minutes a game, but he had a 15% offensive rebound rate last season. So he's going to be able to uphold that value there. Plus a little bit of upside on the wings with a guy like Terrence Arsenault, who is much better on the offensive glass than for his position anyway. And then I think Darian Williams can be fine in this area if it's more of an emphasis of the offense. So yeah, I would call those the strengths. I don't know. Did you want to dive into any more weaknesses, or do you want me to just slide right into it?
I was just going to be more direct. So like my playmaking.
We'll let him get it off his chest.
There you go. Yeah.
My playmaking strength with like Holloman and Williams' ability, like their passing ability, I think maybe gets diminished a little bit with this team because the shooting is not great. I think they have a couple of guys. I think that like Arsenault maybe has some upside. Like McNeil has some upside, although it was like low volume. He wasn't playing a lot. I mean, he was like 35% last year. Well, like overall, I don't know as if there's like a ton of shooting depth across the board here. So that's kind of a concern to counter argue like their playmaking. I do think like NC State fans, I do think Cody made some valid points about like the offensive rebounding being a strength. I get a little bit excited and got too far into it.
That's all right. That's okay.
No. But I think that's like my more direct, like main concern is the shooting along with or alongside Holloman and Williams.
Cody, let's hear your weaknesses.
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty much in line with that. I think the efficiency from the field is going to be an issue, especially in a half-court setting. I mean, I think there might be a little bit too much of an offensive load on Darian Williams because of this. I mean, you mentioned, the shooting. I don't think the shooting talent is necessarily great. Like Trey Holloman has improved every year as a shooter while he was at Michigan State, but shot at just 33% last year on higher volume. Allen Breed is not a great shooter at all. I mean, he only played 2 games last year and was like 3 for 6 from 3 or something like that. But his career at Providence didn't go very well from a shooting perspective. Arsenault is more of a stationary guy, and Kadir Copeland is the rim-reliant thin guard that doesn't shoot it well. So I don't really love his projection. And we've seen him at Syracuse just not really provide a ton of offensive efficiency. So I think I pretty much know what we're getting in that regard. I mean, and like I said, it's going to be up to guys like McNeil and Abel to be able to provide a spark in the shooting department. But another concern I have, and I don't think Marcus is going to love this one all that much, and I think it's with the higher usage of Darian Williams in a worse offense is going to make for, I mean, I'm not going to say like a significant efficiency dip, but I do think it's a pretty big concern. He's a great playmaker. He's going to be able to play make for others, but when there's not shooting to capitalize on it, I do have some issues. And like he played in a really good offense last season at Texas Tech. He played with guys like Christian Anderson, JT Toppin, and then the other floor spacers and like Chance McMillan and Kerwin Walton, Elijah Hawkins, and he was still only able to shoot it like, what was his effective field goal percentage? Like 47% or 49.5%. Like that's probably below average for a front court piece. And then when you have the rim gravity and Toppin and then the spacing to go along with it, it's not all that great. And then when you bring in the top 50 competition that he faced, and he faced 14 teams that were inside the top 50, he had a 44.6% effective field goal percentage and a 38% mark inside the arc overall. Add in the fact that he had a low free throw attempt rate, and I think there's some real like cause for concern with him from an efficiency perspective when there is an elite spacing around him.
I mean, NC State better hope that ends up not being true
Yeah.
because they paid him a decent chunk of change to go there.
And he's a strength regardless, just because of like he's a strength for this team regardless. Just like getting him to leave Texas Tech, a team that went to the Elite Eight, like basically had a Final Four appearance stolen from them in the final minutes, and then you end up like getting him to go to NC State. It just shows how good of a recruiter Will Wade is, and like how much the players love him, and like the culture that he brings. Like I think that's another strength in itself. So being able to just grab the talent in Darian Williams is huge, but I do think there are some causes for concern with a much higher usage, because we didn't see him have a high usage really until this past year where he was at 26%. I don't even think he was in the 20s before this season.
Let's talk to defensively now, and we're going to start out with Marcus, and let's talk strengths defensively.
Yeah. I mean, I think this goes sort of hand in hand with what Cody talked about with like their wing depth. I think they are going to be able to do a lot of different things on the defensive end. I think they're going to be able to make some plays and hopefully get out in transition, because I don't, as we've talked about, necessarily love how they project all the time in a half-court setting. So I think they may need to get out in transition more. But I think they have some guys that they're going to be able to do that with guys like Arsenault and Copeland in particular, like, you know, on the wing, being able to disrupt. And, you know, Arsenault coming from a program, like I said, in Houston that, you know, hangs its hat on defense. Copeland coming from the Will Wade system. I think this defense as a whole is going to have some switchability, going to be able to just do different things that make them just a versatile unit, and hopefully the reason why NC State ends up being like a solid team. I also think like the defensive boards, similar to what you said on the offensive boards, I think they have the ability to rebound on the defensive end fairly well. I'm not going to say like it's going to be like an elite trait, but I think they're going to be solid there. Like, for as much as we talked about UNC not being very good last year up front, like they did have Ben Allen Lubin, who's now at NC State, have a 20% defensive rebound rate. Darian Williams is right at 15. I think other guys like Arsenault are capable of chipping in there. So I think like those are my strengths. I think the defensive end is where Will Wade's going to have to focus a lot of his efforts to hopefully generate offense for his team.
Cody, what do you think about defensive strengths? Do you share the same thoughts, or?
I share the same strength from the perimeter perspective. Like, as much as we like don't love these guards from an offensive standpoint, I think the defensive side of the ball was the actual reason they were brought in. There isn't an athletically lacking guard really on the roster, and I think they're going to be extremely disruptive and difficult to score on the perimeter and even in the paint with this pretty heavy paint and rim denial scheme. Like, we've seen guys like Kadir Copeland have success in this scheme at McNeese. He had a 3.6% steal rate, and he's really interchangeable, which I think is the theme with this roster, as you mentioned. And a guy like Darian Williams, I think is, I don't know if he's an underrated defender, but I mean, I think people are starting to realize his offensive talent so much that they don't really talk about him on the defensive side of the ball anymore. He's a high level on ball defender. So I think this perimeter group is going to be really good, and they're going to protect the rim well with the scheme overall. Like, they're probably going to give up their like a higher field goal percentage at the rim, but just the amount that they deny it is going to allow them to be fine in that area. And they're going to force a ton of turnovers in this scheme as well. They're going to play in the gaps and just really disrupt the ball at all times. Like, they can play in the gaps while still being able to get out to shooters and be fine from a 3-point defense perspective because of the length and athleticism that they have on this roster. Will Wade teams have finished inside the top 50 in defensive turnover rate in 5 of his 11 seasons, which doesn't seem like a lot, but like finishing inside the top 50 in any stat category isn't easy. And if you do it in almost half of your seasons as a coach, I think that's rather impressive. And each of the last 3 seasons, they finished inside the top 15 in defensive turnover rate forced. But I mean, obviously they were in the Southland the last few years. Like, there's a lot of teams that don't take care of the ball well in that league. So, but still impressive nonetheless. So yeah, those are my strengths that I have listed. And I'll just dive into one of the weaknesses. Like, I definitely have a little bit of pushback with the defensive rebounding strength that Marcus mentioned. Will a Will Wade team has never finished inside the top 175 nationally in defensive rebound rate, and I think a lot of like the scheme kind of dictates that. You know, there's a lot of rotating in this scheme, so you're not really in rebounding position. Plus, like, yeah, just like the hyper like aggressive style isn't going to allow for a great impact in this area, and like I guess like the rebounding depth isn't great. Like when Van Allen Lubin goes to the bench, like who's really going to take over? Because I don't think. I mean, Scotty Abubi's a fine defensive rebounder, but I don't really think he's going to be playing the backup five. Like he'll be the primary backup five, but I don't think he's. I think they're going to have some lineups where they play a little bit of small ball, just like they did with Will Wade at McNeese State, like playing like Christian Shoemate at the five. Like it helped them in the turnover category, but on the defensive glass was a struggle. So I think we see this team play a lot of small ball, and in turn, like they're just not going to be all that great on the defensive glass, even though it's never really held back a Will Wade defense. You know, four of the 7 teams that didn't finish top 175 on the glass we're still inside the top 100 in defensive efficiency. So I don't really see it being a major concern.
Any other weaknesses to add before I send it over to Marcus? Cody?
That's really all I had listed. I think this is going to be a top 3 or 4 defensive team in the ACC. So I don't really have a ton of weaknesses. Probably just the glass.
Marcus, what do you think?
Yeah. I think like scheme aside, which is obviously I think going to mask some things defensively, especially like the front court. It's not an overly big or deep, like you said, Cody, front court unit. And it's not like a super talented rim protection unit either. Like Van Allen Lubin was like the leader in block rate last year on this team at 5%. Like you said, the scheme's going to play a big piece of that where it's not necessarily like needed. I think opponents, like you said, are going to shoot a higher percentage at the rim, but like the talent and the depth as a whole in the front court to me is a little bit of a weakness because like Van Allen Lubin's not going to play 40 minutes, like you said. Darian Williams might, but he's 6'6" and going to play the 4. Like it's not an overly big front court. So that I think is my main concern because, you know, they're going to play significantly bigger teams at times that maybe are able to get the ball inside, you know, despite scheme. So that is a little bit of concern for me.
Cody, let's hear your X factor and MVP.
Yeah, my MVP. I mean, I don't have a ton of concerns with Williams. I'm more nitpicking, but yeah, my MVP is Darian Williams. I think he's going to be the engine for this offense. I think he could potentially be the leader in points, rebounds, and assists. Like it wouldn't really surprise me at all. And you know, he could prove me wrong, and this team ends up being really good, and he could be the ACC Player of the Year. Like it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like he's probably in the top 5 for ACC Player of the Year, but definitely the MVP here. But my X factor, I went with Van Allen Lubin. I think he's going to be really important for the offensive side of the ball because I don't really think like we've mentioned, there's not a ton of spacing here, and we don't really think the guards are going to project to provide like major value. I think Van Allen Lubin's going to be really important as a role man in this offense and on the offensive glass, kind of upholding their value there, particularly in short roll. I think he could be a solid short roll decision maker. There's not a ton of like playmaking upside, but I think he's going to have to do that if this offense wants to have any type of ceiling.
Yeah.
You share the same thoughts, Marcus?
And Cody brings up an interesting point about Lubin because like towards the back half of the season last year, he did play quite a bit better on the offensive end and saw, you know, higher minutes for that Carolina team. For me, I went with my X factor is Terrence Arsenault. I think just both ends of the floor, really the versatility and like upside. I don't really know what to expect, I guess, from him in a bigger role, which I expect he'll have, particularly on the offensive end. So I guess that's why I put him at an X as the X factor, because I think there is some upside there. And then the defensive end, I think we know what we're getting. He's going to be able to kind of impact and guard in multiple positions. MVP, not a ton needs to be said. I think Darian Williams, clear number one on this team, going to really be there, like you said, their engine. It's a perfect term. He's going to create everybody's opportunities. He's going to create most of the offense. He's going to be impactful defensively. I'm as high on Darian Williams as anybody could be. Yeah.
Cody, ceiling, floor, bowl prediction?
I think the floor is pretty high just because I think the defense is going to be pretty good. I see them as pretty much a top 45 to 50 team, like pretty easily throughout the entire season, just because of what Will Wade provides with his scheme and what this roster looks like on the defensive end. I think it's too good to fail. I think the floor is the ceiling. Ceiling is probably not as high as people think. A lot of people think this team is like a for sure tournament team, and like they could easily be like a 4 or 5 seed. Or I just don't really see that with the offense. I think there's a real chance that this offense finishes like outside the top 75 to 80 from an adjusted efficiency standpoint. It wouldn't surprise me if the bottom fell out on that end. Like, I think we can kind of see, like, it's not St. John's. Like, I don't think it's a St. John's like level defense from last season, but I do think the offensive concerns can kind of be in line with them to where they're going to be a super defense heavy team that has a high floor, but I just don't think they can go super deep in the tournament despite like potentially being a 4 or 5 seed.
So you still see 4 or 5 maybe?
I can like see it. Like if the defense is like top level, like I just don't see it as it being like a top 3 defense in the country like St. John's last year. I see it being more top 15-ish, like at its peak. But I do think there's more avenues for the offense to kind of bottom out. It's like I personally think their ceiling is 7 seed because I think there's a little bit less talent across the board than that St. John's team from last year.
And bowl prediction, was that it?
Bowl prediction is, I think they sit on the bubble pretty much all year long. But I just think like it feels like I'm in the minority when it comes to saying this team isn't a for sure tournament team. Like every expert I've heard from, everybody I see on Twitter says like this team is for sure getting into the tournament and they're going to make noise. Like I just don't really completely see it. I need to see it with my own eyes in the season to believe it.
So it sounds like you guys kind of agree on the bowl prediction front, but I'll let you carry it away with the ceiling floor you have.
Ceiling, I'll start there. I think 5 seed is a good spot for them. I think like if you asked a lot of people, they're probably, like you said, Cody, I think people would say, oh, this team like ceiling's probably 2 or 3 seed. Like I don't see that, as you heard from me at the outset. As for the floor, I think like bubble is kind of where they can be. I don't necessarily think that, like you said, the offense is all that good or all that talented, and like they better hope that their defense generates some offense for them if they want to be better than that. Personally, I think they're going to be closer to the latter. They're going to be closer to that bubble than the 5 seed, like I said. But I do think there is a world where they could end up being one of those like 5, 6 seed teams.
All right, we're going to wrap it up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.